He loved hip-hop music. Cincinnati at the time had a pretty significant community when it came to music. Many of you all know the history of Cincinnati with music, with James Brown's record label here, and I guess in the 60s and the 70s there were some recording artists that came from here that gave a lot of notice. But there was one that wasn't getting a lot of notice. There was something called Scribble Jam. That was a hip-hop youth festival that was occurring every year, where DJs would act, and there were break dances that would put the floors, grease the floors up really good, and then they would spin on their heads and they would go on the break dance. Even in 2000, 99, these events were going on in the city, but they weren't getting much notice. And so you really had to be part of that community and part of that in crowd in order to know about it and be connected to it and be a part of it. So Captain knew about all this. Captain loved it. He was part of it. And so his idea was to create a voice for those who actually were asking for their voices to be heard. To create an outlet for those who said, I appreciate this particular type of music that many don't understand. I appreciate this culture that many don't understand. How about if we have a creative outlet for those to plug into so that they can be directed and have the ability to communicate what are their issues so that we can avoid the possibility of something such that happened in 2001. And so there was the creative voice that was created. In 2007, I got on the bench. And as I said before I became a judge, I was very active in the community, a lot of different levels. In fact, I appreciate being back here at Crisis Computer today. It was 8 years ago, 8 years and about 4 months ago, that there was an issue in the prosecutor's office. And Mike Allen ended up stepping down, and Dieters came back from the state treasurer's office to run for prosecutor. Well, he had an opponent as a write-in, they were both write-ins. I was that opponent. And here is where we had our first forum. We got an invitation to come and speak at Christ Cathedral about why I wanted to prosecute, and it was supposed to be me and Joe, and he didn't show up, and I was too naive to believe that he was going to be here. But anyway, that's another issue for another day. But I appreciate being back here to talk about issues that are relevant to the community. So 2007, I was fortunate enough to be appointed judge. And as someone who had been active in the community, the church, active in the Masonic Order, active in the legal community, speaking, public speaking, sitting on boards, I continuously heard the arguments that people made that system is not good, that they don't want to be treated fairly. Now, I think that based on things that had happened in the past, there was legitimate reason to say that, although people weren't willing to acknowledge the changes, the positive changes that had occurred over a 20 or 30 year period. But it was still the perception that people had. So when I put on a robe and sat in front of people who have to get in trouble or had contact with the police officers, I had to keep in mind that my history suggested to me that I had a little better or a little different understanding of what the system was supposed to be for and why people were appearing in front of the court. And that the responsibility that I had was to ensure, number one, that people were punished, if appropriate. The second, to do what we could do to steer people away from the conduct and from the environment and from the behavior that led them there in the first place. That's what needed to be done. And I try to take the responsibility as a judge. Present day, I average about 50 or 60 cases a day. As a municipal court judge, I hear domestic violence, assaults, DUIs, disorderly conduct, traffic tickets, anything where someone is facing 6 months of jail or less. And so it's a very high volume court. There are 14 judges, 14 Hamilton County judges in the same level of cases, handling the same level of cases that I do. And if you just think about the numbers, if I have 50 cases a day, any given day, the other 12 or 13 have about that many cases. I mean, every day that's 1,500 or more cases. And so with the volume of cases that we have, it's the court, the municipal court, that is most likely the place that people's perception of how the court operates actually is made. If the court is perceived in the municipal court to be unfair, then that's what's going to be communicated to people in the public. So when I see people coming in front of me, I give you some individual examples. What I recognize is things that we already know, but it's actual examples. We know that when someone has a person who looks after them, who mentors them, who encourages them, who motivates them, who gives them positive reinforcement, that they're less likely to engage in behavior that's destructive. We know that individually. We believe that to be true. I see it in court, and I know this is the case. I see people who come in front of me who, many times they're 19, 20, 22 years old, and they're standing there by themselves. Sometimes when they first offense, they're standing there by themselves. Now, how many of us, if we got in trouble, knew that we'd have someone standing beside us, or standing behind us, or saying, don't worry, I have your back. I'll support you. I don't like what you did, and I'm going to chastise you when you get home. But at least I'm going to stand there, and I'm going to be there with you. It means something to have a hand. And when somebody doesn't have that hand, they're new in court, I try to be that leveling force. But it's something important to have. What else do I see? I see individuals who believe that there's nothing out here. I see individuals who make a mistake. And probably 85% of people who come to court on disorderly conduct, theft charges, and on domestic violence, and on these charges, are there for two primary reasons: substance abuse and mental health issues. The largest majority of people who end up in court are there for those two reasons. And so it's important for us to be proactive. When I say us, I mean the systems, I also mean individuals in the community, to be proactive in helping to address these issues before people get into the court, before they have to show up in court. And so I talk about then the module of elements. Why is elements necessary? How does that relate to the court system? Well, for over 100 years, our communities have had organizations that have been interested in our youth. What are those organizations? Obviously, the church youth groups, the boys clubs, the YMCAs. I'm a member of a Masonic group. We have a youth group called the Fanon, where we mentor young men and mentor young women and try to teach them about respect and work ethic and educational pursuits. Those modules were in the community and still exist and have for as long as we all remember. But I don't see those groups showing up in court today. I don't see those groups marketing themselves, nor changing with the times. And let's be honest, times in this world have changed. Our culture changed significantly in the 60s. The mindset of us as a society began to change. Partly because of politics, partly because of awakening of rights, just for a lot of different reasons. But as we changed as a society, many of those organizations did not modify their agenda in order to continue to attract and to meet the needs of the youth that they said that they were looking to help. So what do we need to do in 2012 to kind of turn the tide, to continue to attract, to help, to meet the needs of the youth who need us? I say elements is one of the answers. There's no question of the incredible impact that hip-hop culture has on our society. It's in fashion, it's obviously in the music, it's in the minds, it's in the way we communicate. The president, I think he said he had Jay-Z on his top songs on his iPod, and I know he has them on the red line. They talk and stuff like that. So even just as the figures in hip hop have an influence on how we think and on the images that we see, and we know that it has an impact on the youth who we see standing on the corners, going to school, going down to the BMV looking for jobs. I've had to tell a few young folk who come in my courtroom that you don't come in my courtroom with your pants hanging down, asking me to have mercy on you. Sorry, that's just, we can talk after that, but we need to address some other stuff before that's something I can look at. And so if we have youth centers that say we recognize that society has changed, we recognize that there's different things that attract and hold the attention of the youth, that will pull them off of the streets and tell them, look, there's different ways to do things than what you believe you know. And if we plant mentors in youth centers such as ours, you have the components that help out a whole lot of court. Number one, you have something that attracts people from the distractions of the streets. And number two, you have individuals they can look to and say,